Alright folks, welcome back to the channel. Today is a campground review of a DEC campground that is only going to appeal to a certain demographic. And that campground is Forked Lake. It's an unusual campground, not the type I usually stay at, but I enjoyed my time there and I'm going to do my best to give a review of this unusual DEC campground. So follow along. Alright folks, welcome back. If this is your first time watching, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below to continue to follow my adventures. But today is a campground review of the DEC campground Forked Lake. And Forked Lake is an unusual campground where the vast majority of the sites are on Forked Lake, and you have to either paddle, boat, or hike to the sites. Now there are a handful of sites at the main entrance, but the vast majority are on Forked Lake. So this campground is a primitive campground that's only going to appeal to a certain demographic. So I review my campgrounds in 5 different categories. They are inner roads and sites, facilities, amenities, staffing, and price point. Each one of those categories gets a 0 to 10 score, with 10 being the best. In the end, I add up the scores that are given, divide by 5, that gives me the final grade for the campground. So let's get into it, inner roads and sites. And this is where I'm going to have to modify this category a little bit, because really the inner roads to this campground, to your sites, is a waterway. So I'm going to count the waterway as a road to your sites. There's also hiking trails to get to the site, so that I have to consider too. But Forked Lake is about 12 miles south of Long Lake. You have to go, it's a long dirt road into the campground. When you first pull into the campground, it is a dirt road in, there's parking areas, and then the main area. And that main road takes you right down to a boat launch where you can launch your canoes, your kayaks, and your motorboats. Now, the boat launch is nice size, easy access in and out. So then, once you're in the water, you have to follow the end of the Racket River up in to Forked Lake. There are many rocks under the surface of the water that you can hit. The day that I went in, I was on my kayak and it was a bright sunny day, and so I actually bounced off a couple of rocks on the way out. And if you have a motorboat, you're going to have to bring your motor up as you maneuver out to the buoys. Now there's buoys that you stay in between that you know you won't hit any rocks, and you have to go about 30 yards past those buoys out into the lake before you can lower your motor back down and go. So once you get out into the main body of the lake, the threat of hitting rocks is very minimal unless you're close to shore. So the sites on these, in the main body, there's about 7 sites that you can put an RV on or a truck camper. Only about 3 that I could fit this camper on. So if you have a camper bigger than this, you're probably not going to fit on any sites there. But if you have a little pop-up, a truck camper, a little A-liner camper, there are sites there that you can get onto. But the vast majority of these sites, you paddle out to, your motorboat out to, or you put all your gear on your back and you hike out to. The hiking trails, I did hike the trails just to see how the trails were. The trails are in good condition, they're well marked. The sites go anywhere from, they have a dock where you could pull your canoe or kayak up onto or tie your boat off, or they have a rocky shorefront to a nice beach front like mine, to a couple of the sites that I checked out that were mucky on the front. As soon as you stepped out of the kayak, you sunk in muck right up past your ankles. So be aware that some of the sites are like that. So for inner roads and sites, I gave Forked Lake a 5.0. On to facilities. You have to keep in mind that this is a remote campground. Even the campground itself does not have power coming from the outside. They generate their own power through solar panels and a battery house with a backup propane generator. And so for the facilities in the main body of the campground, there are two pit toilets, men's and women's pit toilets. There are no showers in this campground. There are water spigots. I think there was 2 water spigots where you can get water, but there's a sign on each one of those spigots that says boil water before consuming. So you have to keep that in mind. Also, that if you're going to fill your water jugs up there before you head out, you're going to have to boil that water. Each site only has a picnic table and a fire pit. There are no hookups at anywhere in this campground, and the sites out on the lake only have outhouses for a privy. The outhouses that I stopped to look at on the sites were in good condition. Remember to bring your own toilet paper, as the outhouses are not cleaned and they are not maintained by the campground. You have to provide your own toilet paper and anything else that you need. This is a carry in and carry out campground, so when you paddle out to these sites, boat out to these sites, whatever you take in with you, you have to bring out with you. Please do not trash the sites. So it is a primitive campground. That's the way it is. Like I said, it's only going to appeal to a certain demographic. So for facilities, I gave Forked Lake a 5. Amenities. Now this place, because it's out in the wilderness, offers quite a few amenities. They do have canoes to rent, and they have PFDs that you can use. At the sites, you can go fishing, you can go swimming, you can go dipping if you want. There are hiking trails. You can paddle the lake. You can paddle up Forked Lake up to one of the great camps. You could portage over to Racket Lake. It's just an area with a lot to explore, and I also think that the campground sells firewood that you would have to paddle in or put on your boat. Matter of fact, I did see there was a group that went up fishing. They had a boat and they brought in tents and generator, and their site was lit up more than a Walmart parking lot. But that's your choice when you come in. So for amenities, this campground, not too bad. I'm going to give them a 6. Onward to staffing. So the day that I checked in, the fellow that was checking me in, he was just happy-go-lucky. He was answering my questions. He actually gave me a tour of the place. When I started asking questions, he's like, come on, I'll show you. And he took me back and showed me the solar panels, the battery system that they use, the generator system they use, and how things are stored. And he was answering every question that I had. He was just a good old boy. I mean, I'm sure he loves his job out there. But anyways, the day that I checked out, there was a girl that was coming in, and there was a different person at the check-in building, and she had 100 questions for this lady, and this lady answered off every single question. There wasn't one question she said that she didn't know the answer to. So I think this was the girl's first time camping, maybe solo camping, and she was asking some questions. Now there are bear lockers at each one of the sites there, so you probably want to put your food into those bear lockers, and I think that was a concern of hers, but really my time there I didn't see any bears. But for staffing, they did a wonderful job. They were great. They answered all sorts of questions. I'm giving staffing an 8.0. Price point. Well, the price for this campground is $16 a night, plus the $7.25 reservation fee through Reserve America. There's a 2-night minimum, I believe, at this campground when you go to stay there. And as much as I don't care for Reserve America, I think their fee is too much. This place is a pretty decent place to have the base camp. If you like primitive camping, if you like fishing, or you just want to go out and experience some nature and paddle around Forked Lake, it's a great place to go. So for price point, I'm going to give them a 6.0. Incidentals. Well, Forked Lake is remote. There's no cell service there anywhere that I had on the lake. Some of the sites there, maybe you want to take a look at some of the sites before you book one, because like I said, some of the sites have mud out in front of them, a rocky shoreline to a nice beach. Mine had a nice beach. That was number 75, I think it was. Gas and groceries are over 10 miles away in Long Lake, and but the staff there at this campground was wonderful. If you have any issues, they are the people to turn to. They seem to have a lot of answers because they answered that girl's questions one right after another. So Forked Lake scored on my campground review 30 points out of a possible 50 for an overall score of 6.0. Again, this campground is only going to appeal to a certain demographic. That's going to be the people that don't mind putting their gear on their back and hiking into sites, loading up their canoe, their kayak, or their motorboat, and heading out to these sites. And I advise anybody that goes there there are bear lockers at the site. Make sure you use those. Do not put food in your tent, and sit down and enjoy yourself. It's not a bad campground at all to go back and get one with nature. So Forked Lake scores a 6.0 on my campground review. All right, folks, you watched all the way through. Thanks for that. If you liked the video, make sure to give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, click the subscribe button down below. Continue to follow the adventure. And remember, folks, tomorrow is no guarantee for any one of us. So disconnect from that Wi-Fi, connect to this out here. You won't be disappointed.